Hey there, my name is Alex. I am the Mont, and welcome to the year 2020. 2020. Another year, another video recapping the one that came before. So in this video, we'll be taking a look back at the year 2019, talking largely about some of the media releases of the year, such as movies and the like, maybe a few games. Oh, and before I forget, this video is sponsored by the CH. And just what is the CH? Well, it's a science fiction and fantasy fandom forum dedicated to the free and civil exchange of ideas and creative works in the form of fanfics, artwork, discussion, and much more. I pick and choose my sponsorships quite carefully, so when given the chance to help promote a forum that I find quite interesting myself, I jumped at the chance. Incidentally, CH is a term from Dune, and we'll be talking a little about Dune later in this video, near the end when we talk about the upcoming movie. That out of the way, let's continue. Let's start off with personal stuff, something I rarely bring up in videos as my life isn't super exciting, nor the reason you watch my videos. So at the start of 2019 I put in an offer for a home, and after months of faffing around, I finally moved into my first home at the end of the year. So that's nice, I'm finally a property owner of sorts. It's a definite weight off my shoulders to get on the property ladder, and if you're trying to get on it yourself, good luck. I know it's very hard, and a lot of older people or people who live in areas where houses cost $5, they don't really understand the stress of it all. That out of the way, how was gaming in 2019? Well, whilst it wasn't a terrible year, it was definitely one lacking in major releases to get excited for, in my opinion. Whilst 2018 had two games that were both so good, I couldn't decide which was my game of the year, 2019 I struggled to even think of one. Indeed, the VGA nominations were a little lacking in my opinion. I laughed when I saw Outer Worlds on there, for example. Outer Worlds being the most average video game I've played in a long time. Nothing about it is good. Nothing about it's really bad. It's just incredibly average. Resident Evil 2 remake was a lot of fun, and whilst I enjoyed Sekiro, it wasn't really Game of the Year material for me. But I'm glad it won all the same. I spent most of 2019 playing Monster Hunter, Final Fantasy XIV, and towards the end of the year, Red Dead on PC. Perhaps my favourite new release of the year was Risk of Rain 2, which is one of my favourite games, and I'm so impressed at what a small team is able to put out. If you haven't checked it out, definitely give it a look. I also began replaying Witcher 3 on PC. I played it a few years ago on PS4, and I'm enjoying that game a lot too. Whilst it has some issues, I'm enjoying replaying it and just taking in all the work that the devs put into it. And hey, it's a nice seg into our next section. We'll now talk about TV shows, or shows, as most of them weren't on TV, they were just, yeah. So, Witcher's Netflix series has begun. Lots and lots of people are being introduced to the Witcher world. It's almost like a new Game of Thrones for people to get into, huh? As for me, well, I'm in the position of, I enjoy the Witcher games, but the books don't really interest me. I know that probably sounds sacrilegious to some people, but the books are either poorly written or poorly translated, and at the end of the day, it's the same thing to me, in the sense that even if the original books are amazing, what good is that to me if I can only experience a rubbish translation? I'm not learning Polish to read the original books because I suck at learning languages. The developers of the games, however, put so much passion into it that I would argue they've elevated the source material. They seem to have put more thought and care into it. The Netflix series, though, how is it? I'd say it's okay. I enjoyed watching it, but nothing about it really stood out to me in terms of being great. I think Henry Cavill was a good Geralt, and the lady they cast for Ciri is a good Ciri, at least physically. She has a sort of almost alien look to her that I think is fitting. A sort of elven, inhuman beauty, I guess you could say. As for how well she's portraying Ciri, well, I mean, mostly she's just been running around and looking scared, so we'll have to see how she develops in later seasons. There's definite parallels I see people drawing between her and Dany from Game of Thrones. ignoring the fact that they're both, magical special bloodlines and blonde or whatever. They start off young, weak and scared, and they develop over time. Judging purely from the games, Ciri was handled a lot better than a certain Daenerys Targaryen. Unfortunately, some of the other cast members irk me to a degree. Now, of course, it's a hard subject to talk about because if you criticize an actor who happens to be black, for example, then you're just racist, apparently. All the same, I don't think Fringilla was cast well. For starters, I feel like they should have gotten someone who had a vague resemblance to Yennefer's actor, because, from what I understand, Yennefer and Fringilla are supposed to look rather alike. Beyond that, I just don't think she's a very good actor. As for Yennefer herself, I don't care if they cast a white Yen, black Yen, Asian Yen or whatever, and I think her actor's done an okay job, but I also don't think she quite conveys the sort of sultry power that Yennefer has in the games. As for the timid Yen, sure, she conveyed that well, but I don't buy her as being a figure of authority and respect. Maybe she isn't meant to be one, though? After all, the games are from Geralt's perspective, so maybe we are seeing her how he sees her. I don't know. Whilst I think Yennefer is fine, she's not that accurate to the game Yennefer, and book Yennefer, which she is an adaptation of course, I don't really know, because of garbled translations that read like a bad soap opera. Still, for the most part, I think Yen's actor is fine. As for Triss, she's doing a good job as Triss, as I can recognise Triss-like aspects of her. But, and I feel bad for saying this, I don't think she's attractive enough. A lot of the magic users in the show are sort of plain or average, normal looking people, which I think slightly defeats the point of focusing so much of their story, almost a third of the entire show, on them being beautiful, trading things in for beauty and power. Then they're just sort of normal looking people. Even their clothes aren't all that fancy. Just seems to me that so much of the mage's themes focus around the appearance of power, looking beautiful with the most fabulous, ridiculous clothes to convey that sense of importance and power, to make people feel like they are sages, wise and all-powerful. Compare with Melisandre from Game of Thrones, a very similar character who uses glamours to make herself appear far more than she really is. Sure, she has magic, but most of it is illusions and fakery, used solely to make her look more powerful and beautiful than she really is, because the illusion is enough to instill fear and respect. Witcher kind of struggles with that because they're just normal people who then can shoot out fireballs. And hey, if they focused on good actors over good looking actors, that would be fine too, but they kinda didn't. Of all the mages, only Tissaia stood out to me for acting chops, again in my opinion. Then we have Vilgefortz. I was disappointed with his casting too, from the male side of things. He's meant to be distractingly handsome and basically a Gary Stu who is perfect at everything. They cast some normal looking dude for him. When you first see him, it's like, oh, is that just some random background character? He doesn't catch your eye, you don't look at him and think, wow, he's handsome or something. His actor, well, we need to wait and see how well he portrays him, maybe he'll do a great job, but so far he's been, that could just be to throw us off, as obviously Vilgefortz has his own secrets to store. Finally, there's Foltest, who is described in the books as young and pretty, too pretty. So they cast a gruff, portly, kind of ugly older man. I don't understand the rationale there. Likewise, on the topic of races or skin colour, Witcher is a series that heavily deals with racism, largely between human and non-humans. And yet we have the Empire of Nilfgaard, who are conquering, nation after nation, they're the bad guys, and yet they are inexplicably all white. Generally speaking, if you are conquering other nations, you start bringing their men into your army as conscripts. That's how your army grows, that's how you're able to keep on conquering. But in Nilfgaard, they kill everyone, as they seem to genocide every country they invade, whilst still having an unlimited supply of troops somehow. I don't really understand that. Nilfgaard would have every reason to be multicultural and full of distinct peoples and cultures, as they are an empire that is conquering other nations. But they're all white, and then a random landlocked village in the middle of nowhere in a small country is very diverse. Doesn't really make much sense, and it's the opposite of how it works. If you go to a city like London, LA or New York, you'll find people from all sorts of backgrounds. If you go to a small rural area with a tiny population, it's kind of the opposite. I feel like maybe the writers either didn't think of that, or they didn't care about it, or they just grew up in LA and they have no idea how the rest of the world actually is, and they didn't put any logical thinking into it. You can argue it's a small nitpick, certainly, it's not anything important, but it breaks the immersion for me when they don't think about small details. See, small details help make up the whole. That's one reason the Witcher games are so good. There are so many tiny details that help the overall experience. The Netflix show feels dumbed down and just kind of dumb. But there are a few small details that I noticed here and there that were nice, such as the dragon's mouth not moving when he speaks. But it often feels like they just ignored things or glossed over them, or they went, let's just do this because, and that you should never do something just because, and it frustrates me a little. Overall, I enjoyed the show. There aren't any great qualities to it. The sets, costumes, writing, acting, whatnot, nor is the direction all that compelling, but as an overall package, it is entertaining. It's kind of like your average Marvel movie. There's not really anything much to it, but it's fun to watch. The fights are perhaps one of the better things about the Witcher show, as so far as they've been handled quite well, and again, I think Henry Cavill is doing a good job. As Geralt, he seems very enthusiastic, and that kind of comes across in his performance, even though Geralt is obviously not the most enthusiastic fellow. He seems to be having a good time, and I think he's doing quite a good job. He's channeling some of the spirit of game Geralt without coming off as just an imitation of it, if that makes sense. And I know people are going to be hammering out comments saying, why do you keep talking about the games? This is an adaptation of the books, the original material. I'm aware of that. I just don't really care about the books. Anyway, I'll watch more when they make more, so let's move on to another TV show of 2019, The Boys. I don't really have much to say about The Boys other than I really enjoyed it, and I can definitely recommend watching it. I recently rewatched it just like last week or so, hoping it would give me something to talk about, but no, not really. I don't have much to say about it without going into an entire 30-minute video talking about every minor aspect. So I'm just going to say I enjoyed it and I think you should check it out. Then we have Mandalorian. I was skeptical about this one. You might be aware that Star Wars hasn't been on my fun times list lately, because since Disney took over they've made bland or pointless things I don't care about. I didn't need a movie telling me about the Death Star plans, because I already knew that Kyle Katarn got them until they retconned him and replaced him with some boring dead people. I didn't need to see a movie about young Han Solo. I mean, I also couldn't really see it because that movie was so dark. I don't know even what happened in 90% of it. And the sequel trilogy, yeah. So Mandalorian was something I watched the first episode of, having no expectations. What do you know? Here's the first thing in years to capture the spirit of Star Wars. That is to say, a blending of Western and samurai. The show is episodic in a way that is vaguely reminiscent of some old Flash Gordon kind of things. It's full of interesting or entertaining characters, some familiar faces and alien robot designs that have a reason to be there beyond merely fan service. It even has a new score instead of just reusing 30-year-old music. The stakes are not, we must destroy a planet-sized weapon for the 50th time. It feels like Empire Strikes Back level Star Wars, where George Lucas has input, but other people to temper his more wacky ideas. I have no idea if he was involved, I'm saying, but that's how it feels. I don't hate George Lucas like some people seem to. I think he's a good filmmaker, but I think he gets too focused on certain aspects and misses the macro whilst focusing on the micro in some ways. But I think he has a lot of great ideas, and he's done a lot for filmmaking, even with the prequels, which introduced a lot of modern filmmaking and digital pipelines. You might argue a lot of that is bad, and it's true, digital and CGI aspects can definitely be implemented poorly. They're sometimes implemented poorly in the prequels, but he still effectively was the first person to bring about a new way of making films, giving a new generation an entire powerful toolset with which to create. And I can't hate a guy for that. But yeah, Mandalorian, very entertaining and I enjoyed it a lot. So what's next? I think that about does it for TV shows that aren't on TV, huh? Star Trek has a new series coming soon, which I'm interested in, as they promised less action-oriented and more character-driven study, and I'd like to see that. There's also Wheel of Time and Lord of the Rings series being produced, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're both Amazon. Skeptical, but intrigued. Wheel of Time has insane potential as a franchise. The books were bloated with unnecessary detail. I have them behind me right now. I mean, I have like 11 of them. I don't think I have the last 3 or whatever. But I still remember how books like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all of which are huge books, by the way, they're filler, like nothing happens. You take this immense saga, really cool characters and moments and world building, you condense it down to say, I don't know, 6 books, a couple of TV seasons. It could be really good, maybe even a few movies. Although you would probably need more than 3 movies, I don't know. As for Lord of the Rings, not sure how I feel about that. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, if you're not aware. I've been into Lord of the Rings and Tolkien and stuff since I was like 5 years old. On the one hand, yes, it's nice to see more of it, but only when it's done well. So I'll check it out cautiously. How about movies? I suppose the big 2 for 2019 were Star Wars and Avengers Endgame. I already made a video on Star Wars. As for Endgame, did I make a video on that? I don't even remember. I don't know what I would even say about Endgame. It was an entertaining movie, but not what I'd consider a good movie. I liked seeing Captain America bop Thanos with Mjolnir. I don't and never will get the obsession with Marvel movies. I understand and appreciate the planning and work that goes into a cinematic universe like this, which nobody else has managed to replicate or emulate, but the individual movies are very most of the time. And I know, they're just superhero movies. Don't read too much into it, just enjoy them. Sure, I get that mindset. Point is, they're still not all that good, even in that frame of reference. The action scenes are quite often just whereas, you compare with something like John Wick, which I think is a good comparison because, they're both just entertainment. John Wick has just much better action. Still, there's nothing quite like these Avengers movies and how they were so built up and handled, and it's always worth looking at something that's unique, even if it's not necessarily great. Like, what was that movie a couple of years ago? Cloud Atlas? Not a great movie, but a very interesting and rather unique movie. I'd never seen anything like it. So I suppose most of my appreciation for Avengers is more behind the scenes than the actual contents of the movie, which was just like a big laser show of excitement. Hey, as far as Marvel movies go, one of the better ones, in my opinion, though. I don't know where it can possibly go from here, though. Build up the characters and have some slower moments, and then pace up to Doctor Doom? I don't know. And speaking of, John Wick 3, that was 2019, right? I mean, again, it's good, but I feel like John Wick 2 and 3 are a little bit pointless. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy them. I just don't think we really need them. I'm glad they're keeping Keanu Reeves doing what he's great at, though. I don't think I saw many other movies this year, honestly. There was a Spider-Man movie, which was okay. I've forgotten like 90% of it. I like that a lot of it was more character-driven and, trying to focus on Peter Parker and MJ, but I also, just the other day, rewatched the original Spider-Man trilogy, the Sam Raimi trilogy, and I don't care what anyone says, that is way better than these Marvel ones. Now, Tom Holland is a good Peter Parker, a good Spider-Man, don't get me wrong, I think he's doing a good job there, but the Sam Raimi films are just so much better than these Marvel ones. For starters, they are a lot more like comic books. They aren't afraid to be silly and to go overboard with things, whereas these Marvel ones, they're like, it's like, oh, the Vulture, he's like super grounded and down to earth. It's like, it's a film about a dude who like swings around on webs. You don't need to be super grounded. That's why the Sam Raimi ones were good. Like the second one, you have this ridiculous character, Dr. Octopus, and yet he manages to be both grounded and absurd at the same time, and that's what comic books are supposed to be. And I liked that. Now, beyond that, though, I don't know. I didn't watch many other big movies and maybe some smaller ones. Oh, there was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I enjoyed that quite a lot. I've not actually seen, what were the two movies before that? There was Django Unchained, and then he made Hateful Eight. I've not seen either of those because I watched the one that came before those, Inglorious. What was it? Inglorious whatevers. I forget. I watched that one. I didn't really like it. I liked bits of it, like I liked the beginning scene and I liked the bar scene, but for the most part, I just thought it was weird. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I enjoyed. I thought that was a good movie. I won't go into great details. This video is already stretching. But as for upcoming movies, well, there's the Mulan movie coming out pretty soon. That, I don't know how I feel about that, but I guess we'll see. There's the Dune movie. I'm excited for that because Dune has a lot of cinematic potential. I think there's a very interesting team behind this movie. For starters, we have the director who's made a lot of films I've enjoyed. I think this could be something really special, but I also don't want to get too hyped up just in case, you know, it sucks. But all signs so far are pointing towards good things. Top of my head, there's not too many other movies I can think of. There's the new Top Gun movie. You know, I actually haven't seen the original Top Gun film. I probably should see it, I know. There's actually a lot of, like, really, you know, famous films that I've never seen for some reason. Like, The Shining. I've never seen The Shining. I've never seen Godfather. Just at the top of my head, and there's plenty more. I don't know why. Just never got around to it. Games. Well, by the time this video is out, which should be like end of January, Iceborne should have been out. Right now, I'm recording this before Iceborne is out, but I'm very much looking forward to Iceborne. So right now, I'm probably playing Iceborne. Yay me. There's a Resident Evil 3 remake. I will get that. I might even stream it. And what else do we have coming this year? Probably a new Assassin's Creed game. Nothing too exciting, but I happen to think of it. There's the Final Fantasy VII remake, which I'm curious about. I'm gonna wait and get it on PC, I think, because I don't want to buy it on PS4 when I could buy it on PC. The big one for this year, probably Elden Ring. I mean, assuming Elden Ring comes out in this year, I would assume it will, though. I feel suitably refreshed when it comes to Dark Souls. I'm ready to jump back into that sort of thing. I know Sekiro was only last year, but even that was suitably different, and I played it once, and then I didn't really do much with it. Usually, when a Dark Souls game comes out, I play Dark Souls, I review it, then I play it again, doing a Let's Play of it, then I do lore videos, so it's like non-stop Dark Souls all year round. Whereas I didn't really do much Dark Souls last year. So I've had a year to sort of miss Dark Souls, I guess you could say. So I'm ready to get engrossed in a new title. And I know Elden Ring isn't Dark Souls, but you know there's going to be Dark Souls elements, and for all intents and purposes, it's a new Souls game, most likely. Who knows, maybe there's going to be a gameplay video out that's going to be completely unrelated to Souls. I just don't think that's very likely. I hope Elden Ring is great, because I'm enjoying what I've heard about it so far. Dark Souls with a more northern take on the fantasy as opposed to the classic western dragons and skeletons. Yeah, bring it on. Speaking of which, God of War 18 will probably be getting a sequel. I don't think it's going to be in 2020, it's probably going to be a bit later on for the PS5, but I hope when it does come they give us more big boss battles. That was the main thing lacking in 18. What else we got? Oh, the Last of Us Part 2. I played the first game very recently. Don't think I made any videos about it. It was fine. I didn't fall in love with it, and I didn't understand the hype behind it. I thought it was just like a thing. It was alright. There's also Ghost of Tsushima or something, which Sony are really pushing hard. Might be good. I can't really say without playing it though. Now, of course, we have the next generation of consoles on the way this year, I think. The PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, the Xbox 3. I don't even know what Microsoft are doing. Either way, I'm happy with my PC because that's working well for me. If PS5 has some nutty, good-looking exclusives, maybe I'll see if I can buy a PS5 when I have money. Nintendo announced Breath of the Wild 2 a while back, so maybe we'll get more news of that. I'm really hoping it's got co-op, but I say that about every game, honestly. I really hope it has co-op. Beyond that, I'm really enjoying Final Fantasy XIV. I hope it continues to entertain. Red Dead Online, Monster Hunter, Heroes of the Storm, Risk of Rain, I got plenty to keep me occupied on the gaming front. But I always want that new experience too. For now, I think I'm excited for Elden Ring the most. There's a couple of other smaller games that I'm interested about. There's is it Grand Blue? They're making some like Grand Blue action RPG. I'm curious about that for sure. But mostly Elden Ring. Had some Souls fatigue, but it's been long enough now. I'm ready to get back into one of my favorite things. How about you? What are you looking forward to this year? What did you think of last year? Let me know down in the comments. And once again, this video was sponsored by the science fiction and fantasy forum, The Sietch. Go check them out, there's a link to them in the description. And until next time, you guys take care, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you real soon.